What's up everyone, it's the low-end PC Gamer and today I'm going to be bringing you Bioshock Infinite Backstory Explained. Yep, that's right, I'm going to be explaining the backstory of Bioshock Infinite. Why? Well, because there are a lot of videos on YouTube regarding Bioshock Infinite. Some discuss the ending, others discuss the story, others discuss how this doesn't make any sense. But there haven't been a lot of videos regarding the backstory, and that's a shame because the Bioshock Infinite universe is such rich, filled with many details that aren't just in the main game, but also in the backstory, and all these details are very cool, and that's why I'm here. So I'm gonna try to explain to you all the events that led to the main game with every single detail possible. And so before jumping in, I want to apologize for the sound quality, the really bad sound quality, and some of the background voices you're gonna be hearing, you might be hearing, sorry, in my videos. This is all due my crappy microphone because I don't really have that money to buy a proper microphone. So I hope you guys won't be, how do I say, offended by this. And also I want to mention that I'm new on YouTube, just starting. This is actually my first video posted. So if not too much trouble, please leave a like. It would mean really much to me. And so without any more hesitation, here's the backstory of Bioshock Infinite. The story of Bioshock Infinite begins sometime at the end of the 19th century. After the battle with Wounded Knee, a couple of soldiers felt guilty about the things they did and decided to redeem themselves by washing away their sins in a river and, as they called it, being born again. Among these men was Zachary Hale Comstock, a former soldier who, after the washing, became very religious, believing that science is the product of God and all of the technology is connected to God. He also believed that mankind has, quote-unquote, disappointed God, and that he was sent on earth by him to punish all those who did. To achieve this, Comstock knew he had to gain power. He met physicist Rosalind Lutece, who has been communicating through Morse code with Robert Lutece, a man who is actually the male version of her, but from another universe, or dimension, or world, or however you guys want to call it. For the purpose of this video, we're going to call it a universe. That's okay. For years, Rosalind has wanted nothing more but Robert to come to her universe so that they may work together in order to revolutionize science. She also had a device called the Lutece Field, a machine which was able to open tears, which were holes in the fabric of time and space. But the device wasn't finished because Rosalind didn't have enough money, so the device had many problems like opening random tears and just seeing through them but not being able to cross them. Comstock agreed to fund Lutece with money needed for her research and materials, as long as he can come in at any time and see through the tears that the device was creating. While Rosalind was working on upgrading the machine, Comstock was continuing to see the future, convincing himself that the tears are actually created by God to serve as visions meant for him. One of these visions was a city in the air which he will lead. As the days passed, Rosalind managed to get the device to make the tears transportable and transported Robert to her reality where they finally met face to face. Meanwhile, Comstock knew he had to build the city. Feeling the need to help, Rosalind, along with the help of Robert, created the quantum particle that, according to her, doesn't levitate but simply has failed to fall on the ground. Comstock presented his idea of the floating city along with the particle to the Congress of the United States and asked for them to fund him with the materials needed to construct the city. If you guys don't know, the Congress is basically the government. The Congress made a deal with Comstock that they will fund materials needed as long as when Columbia was finished, the city had to travel across the USA in order to show the people the country's advancement in science. Because at that time the American exceptionalism was popular. If you don't know what that is, just Google it. It's very cool and interesting. Construction of the city began and it was progressing very fast. The construction was finished in 1893 and it began to travel around America. Comstock named the city Columbia after the angel who he claimed showed him the vision. The city was consisted of floating islands designed with docking stations and propulsion devices to allow building sections to move about independently. It was also connected with bridges or sky rails, which were used to transport cargo and eventually people with gondolas around the city. The islands were placed on rockets and giant balloons, which were filled with quantum particles, which actually made the city fly. The city's architecture was comprised of neoclassical buildings similar with the ones in Boston, if you ever been there. The people believed that Columbia was a big achievement for the USA and became interested in living in the city. Columbia's population was growing, and soon it was a famous utopia led by Comstock where everyone thought they were superior. Of course, the Congress were still sending supplies so that the city can function properly, so it was only fair that they also have control over the city. But Comstock, however, didn't like this. He wanted Columbia to become independent as soon as possible. But he also knew that the city would not survive without the help that the government was giving. Robert and Rosalind are introduced to the citizens of Columbia, and the two become very popular figures because of their role in the city. So, Comstock through the Lutece field continued to see the future, like small and big changes. And all these things he saw, he released to the public, and his predictions came true. The people were amazed by this, but when asked how he was able to do this, predict the future, he explained that he had visions from angels and God, which he believed himself. You see, the people didn't know about the Lutece field because it stayed a secret, and believed him when behind his predictions it was science, not religion. Comstock, using these predictions, became a popular figure in Columbia, got married to Lady Comstock, and started to gain trust from the citizens, and in just a short time everyone believed in what he said. He started his own propaganda, declaring himself a prophet and stating that he is sent by God to build Columbia as a new Eden, while the world down below was Sodom, and destroy the world because people are monsters and they don't deserve to live on the world that God gave to them. Except, of course, for the people of Columbia, which he thought to be the best example of the so-called rebirth of civilization. He also stated that only the white man should have all the privileges he needs in this world, while the colored people should serve below them, so basically he was a racist. The people believed in every word that he said. Comstock was gaining trust from more people every day. Due to his influence, Columbia became a paradise whose main focus was on religion, exceptionalism, and racial discrimination. The city was filled with brainwashed, religious racists thinking they are superior beings who worshipped God, their prophet, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin as religious figures, hating Abraham Lincoln and worshipping John Wilkes Booth. If you don't know who John Wilkes Booth is, he's basically the guy that killed Lincoln. The Congress didn't like where this was going. So, Columbia was filled with upper-class people, but the city still needed people to do the hard-working jobs, like keeping places cleaned, working at factories, etc., etc. So, Comstock turned to Jeremiah Fink, a rich businessman and scientist who took black and Irish convicts against their will and brought to Columbia to work. These people were treated horribly, living with barely enough money to buy bread and milk in a polluted shanty town in Finkton. They basically worked 16 hours a day without vacations, some lucky to work as janitors. Their boss was, of course, Fink, and they didn't have any rights, and basically they were treated like slaves. So it was America all over again before Lincoln. Meanwhile, Comstock was still observing the tears in the Lutece lab, and one day he saw something incredible. He saw New York in 1984 being bombarded by Columbia, and eventually Columbia unleashing an apocalypse all around the world. Of course, he was happy about this because at the end he will finally get what he wants. But the one who leads the attack is not Comstock, but his heir. So Comstock decided he needs to have a child. But unfortunately, the side effects of the exposure to the Lutece field began to show, leaving Comstock sterile and unable to have a child with his wife. Furious, Comstock decided to kidnap a baby and claim it as his own. He asked the Lutece twins to find the best match they can find, and they did, but unfortunately the baby was from another universe. Robert went through a tear to get the child, while Rosalind and Comstock stayed behind. Everything was going well. Robert had the baby on his arms, and all he needed to do was cross through a tear on a wall with Rosalind and Comstock waiting on the other side. But, unfortunately for them, they were interrupted by a man who wanted the girl back. Robert crossed the tear, but Comstock and the man were struggling to get the girl. They needed to hurry because the tear was about to close, and if neither of them caved, the girl would die. Eventually, the man let her go, and just before the tear closed, Comstock pulled her through, but not fast enough, and as a result, the girl's pinky was chopped off by the tear and left on the universe where she came from. Comstock named the girl Elizabeth. He explained to the public that Elizabeth is a quote-unquote miracle child that grew in Lady Comstock's womb in just 7 days, and that she will be the one who will unleash fire on the Sodom below. The people believed him and were happy about this. Even Lady Comstock believed that Elizabeth is a miracle child, although she knew that she never became pregnant or gave birth, but she had her doubts. The prophet also said that he had a vision of a man known as the false shepherd, who will one day come and lead the lamb astray. If you haven't figured it out by now, the lamb is Elizabeth. He warned the people to beware of him, and in order to keep Elizabeth safe and fulfill her destiny, he asked Jeremiah Fink to build a tower for her, lock her there, and give her all the privileges she needs. Fink built a tower in the form of an angel and took Elizabeth there, where she will have no contact with a human being for 19 years. Comstock invited the best scientists of Columbia to study her. She was also given a lot of food, clothes, and a lot of books for her to read so that she can learn about the world while she was locked away. So basically he was grooming her and preparing her. This concludes part 1. Stay tuned for part 2. It's gonna come out very shortly. It's right around the corner, which things are gonna be very much more interesting. As I said before, spend 1 second of your precious lives clicking that like button. If you want, share it with your friends on Facebook and Twitter. And remember to keep the peace.